Deep in the river bottoms of East Texas, something quiet is spreading. Not an animal, not a predator with teeth, a plant. And it kills faster than almost anything that walks, swims, or crawls in this state. You've walked past it. Maybe you fished 10 feet from it and never knew. Here's the thing. Most folks think danger in the wild has eyes. This one has roots. It looks like something you'd toss in a stew. Smells sweet, tastes sweet, they say, for the few seconds before it turns on you. And by the time your body understands the mistake, the clock is already running out. Its name is water hemlock, Cicuta maculata. And the people who study poison for a living call it the most violently toxic plant on the entire continent. Not one of the worst, the worst. And honestly, that word violently is doing a lot of heavy lifting once you see what it actually is. Because this isn't a gentle poison. There's no long, quiet sickness. Water hemlock goes straight for the brain. It rips through the nervous system and throws the body into seizures so severe a grown man can't breathe. And it can do that in well under an hour, sometimes far less than that. Now, here's the part nobody puts on a park sign. This plant lives and dies by water, and where Texas water moves, the plant follows, onto banks that used to be bare, near spots where people fish. Ranchers who work these creeks already treat certain wet ground as off-limits for their cattle. They know exactly why. So that's what we're getting into, where it grows, why it fools even careful, experienced people, what it truly does to a living body, minute by minute. And why some old-timers along these rivers quietly fear a flowering weed more than they fear a rattlesnake. Stay with me. This one is worse than it sounds. Let's start with the mistake that gets people killed. Water hemlock belongs to the carrot family, the same relatives as parsley, celery, parsnip, and wild carrot. That family tie is exactly the problem. The plants look alike, the flowers look alike. To an untrained eye foraging near a Texas stream, they're nearly identical. People confuse it with wild parsnip, with Queen Anne's lace, with edible roots they've dug their whole lives. In its first year, it even grows a pale, tuberous root that looks like something you'd want to eat. That resemblance has killed foragers who were absolutely certain they knew what they were pulling out of the ground. And the one tell that separates life from death is hidden underground. Cut the lower stalk open and you'll find chambers, small hollow rooms stacked up the rootstock, oozing a yellowish, oily liquid that turns reddish-brown in the air. That oil is the killer. That's where the toxin concentrates at its very worst. The toxin has a name, too, cicutoxin. And cicutoxin doesn't just upset your stomach the way most poisons do. It goes straight for the central nervous system. It's a convulsant, one of the most potent ones known to science. It doesn't slow the brain down. In plain terms, it sets the brain on fire. Here's how it moves through a person. First, the stomach turn. Nausea, cramping, vomiting, often within 15 to 90 minutes. That vomiting is grim, but the CDC actually calls it a kind of mercy. Some people throw the root back up before enough toxin gets in. The ones who don't are in real trouble, because next comes the flood of saliva, the sweating, the pupils blowing wide open, and then the seizures. Not little tremors, but full body-locking convulsion, broken up by stretches where breathing simply stops. Doctors call the worst version status epilepticus, seizures that will not quit. That is usually the thing that kills. And there is no antidote. Let that sit for a second. For the most toxic plant in North America, medicine has nothing to reverse it. No shot, no pill. All a hospital can do is fight the symptoms, control the seizures, keep the airway open, and ride it out. Treatment is supportive. That's all there is. Let me tell you about a real case, because science only lands when it happens to someone. Maine, October of 1992. Two brothers went foraging, thinking they'd found wild ginseng. The younger one, 23 years old, took 3 bites from a root he dug up. His older brother took a single bite of the same root. Within 30 minutes, the younger man was vomiting and convulsing. They managed to walk out of the woods and call for help. Rescuers arrived fast, within 15 minutes. They found him already unresponsive, blue in the face, seizing, foaming at the mouth. He was intubated on the spot and rushed to a hospital that threw everything at him. He died about 3 hours after eating that root. 3 hours from one foraging trip on an ordinary fall day. And his brother, the one who took a single bite, started seizing about 2 hours in. He survived, but only because care reached him in time. 1 bite. That is the margin we are talking about. That story is the whole terror of this plant. It doesn't look dangerous. It doesn't taste dangerous. The people who die from it are usually careful, outdoorsy, confident, the opposite of reckless. They trusted their own eyes. And with water hemlock, your eyes will lie to you right up until the first seizure hits. Here's a detail that genuinely unsettles me. Historically, some victims were children, and not from eating it. The hollow stems were sometimes cut into whistles, little toy pipes, and putting that stem to the lips was enough to poison a child. The toxin doesn't even require a real meal. Traces and contact can be enough. So, let's talk about Texas, because this is not some far-off problem. Spotted water hemlock grows across east, central, and north Texas. The piney woods, the Gulf prairies and marshes, the post oak savanna, the blackland prairies, the cross timbers, up onto the Edwards Plateau and the rolling plain. It's woven right into the map of this state, and it has one absolute requirement: water. It can't grow just anywhere. It needs streams, marshes, wet meadows, permanent springs, which means it lives exactly where people go to unwind: the shady creek bend, the fishing hole, the riverbank where you let the dog off the leash. It colonizes the pretty spots we love most. Now, I have to be honest about fact versus my own read. The verified part: this plant depends on water, and where water moves, the plant moves with it. As shorelines shift and wet zones expand or migrate, the banks it colonizes shift too. That's basic plant behavior. It isn't controversial, and it isn't opinion. My interpretation, and I'll clearly flag it as mine, is that with the changing water patterns heading into 2026, some of these colonies are turning up on banks that used to be dry or bare. I can't hand you a peer-reviewed survey proving a sudden statewide surge, so take that as an author's read, not fact. But the danger doesn't need a surge to be real. Even one or two plants on a popular bank is a live threat, because the whole problem with water hemlock is that a tiny amount does the job. Eating just a 2 to 3 centimeter piece of root can kill an adult. That's one bite. That is all it takes. That's why ranchers treat it the way they do. Texas agriculture guides are blunt. Animals will die if they're forced to eat the young plant. And there's a specific chilling warning in the literature: do not pull this plant to clear it and then leave it lying around. Pulling it exposes the root to whatever comes next, and the root is where the toxin lives at its absolute worst. So a well-meaning person yanking these weeds off a bank and tossing them aside can create a worse situation than they started with. A curious cow, a loose horse, a dog, or a kid finds that torn-up root on the ground. Good intentions turn deadly. There's a timing element too, and it matters if you spend time outdoors. The plant is poisonous at every stage of its life, but it's considered most toxic in the spring. That's the season when the roots are loaded, and even the tender young leaves can carry hazardous concentration. Spring is the peak of its lethality, which is a cruel overlap when you think about it. Spring is exactly when people head back outdoors. The first warm weekends, fishing season, kids splashing in the shallows, foragers hunting the first green shoots of the year. The plant peaks in danger at the precise moment the riverbanks fill back up with people. The timing is brutal. Let me pull apart why it fools careful people, because just learn to identify it is easier said than done. The flowers are small, white, gathered into umbrella-shaped clusters, and half the harmless plants along a Texas creek look exactly the same. Queen Anne's lace, wild carrot, all that lacy white. It's camouflage in plain sight. The stems can be green, pink, or streaked reddish-purple. That's the spotted in spotted water hemlock. But plenty of other plants have colored stems too. The truly reliable signs are subtle and technical: the chambered rootstock, the oily yellow fluid, and the way the leaf veins run to the notches between the teeth, not the tips. Think about what that means. To be certain, you'd have to dig up the root and slice it open, or study the microscopic path of veins on a single leaf. Nobody does that on a casual walk, which is exactly why this plant has kept killing for as long as records have been kept. Certainty means getting dangerously close. And here's a twist worth sitting with. This is a native plant. We usually save our fear for invaders: the fire ant, the feral hogs, the things that don't belong. Water hemlock has always been here. It's part of the natural Texas landscape. The threat isn't foreign at all. It's homegrown, and it is extraordinarily patient. The historical numbers are sobering. For poisonings recorded between 1900 and 1975, roughly 30% of people seriously poisoned by water hemlock died, nearly 1 in 3. And that's in an era with real medicine standing by. Because remember, there is still no antidote for this. There never has been one at any point. And the deaths almost always trace back to the same cause: misidentification. The CDC put it plainly: water hemlock causes most of the fatalities from mistaking a poisonous plant for an edible one. Because it's lethal in small amounts, it mimics food plants, and it grows all across North America. It's a perfect storm in one weed. Let me paint the scene that keeps me up. A family picnic at a state park, a creek running clear and cool, kids barefoot in the shallows, somebody's dog nosing through the green stuff at the water's edge, chewing on a stem. Nobody thinks twice because it's just a weed by the water, right? That's the whole trap. The danger here never announces itself. No rattle, no growl, no warning coloration your instincts recognize, just a pretty white flower on a green bank in the sunshine. Everything about how we read the outdoors for threats. This plant slips right underneath all of it. It survives and spreads by looking completely and utterly harmless. I don't want to leave you scared and helpless, so let's talk about what actually protects you. The good news is the rules are simple. Rule 1 is the whole game. Never, ever eat a wild root, shoot, or plant from a wet area unless a genuine expert has confirmed it by hand. No exceptions, not ever. That smells sweet, tastes sweet thing people mention, ignore it completely. A pleasant taste means nothing here. Water hemlock reportedly smells like fresh turnips and tastes sweet, and it will still stop your heart. Your senses are not a safety test. Near water, the only safe assumption is that the lacy white plant might be the deadly one. Rule 2. Watch your animals and your kids near creeks and marsh edges. Dogs explore with their mouths. Toddlers grab and chew whatever's in reach. Livestock graze what's in front of them. A huge share of the risk here isn't dramatic foraging at all. It's the ordinary distracted moment at the water's edge when nobody's really watching. Rule 3. If you have to clear it from your property, don't just rip it out and walk away. That exposed root is more dangerous lying on the ground than the plant ever was standing upright. Wear gloves, since the toxin can pass through skin, and dispose of it properly. Don't create a fresh hazard while trying to remove one. Rule 4, and this is the one that saves lives when everything else fails. If you even suspect someone ate this plant, do not wait to see if they'll be fine. Call poison control immediately. Get to an emergency room. With water hemlock, minutes are the entire ball game. The seizures come fast, and they come hard. Think back to those brothers in Maine. Rescue reached them in 15 minutes. He got a hospital, a breathing tube, every intervention available, and 3 hours later, he was gone. That's not a story about slow help arriving late. It's a story about a poison so fast that even good, quick care sometimes just isn't enough. So when I say the old picture of the Texas outdoors is incomplete, this is what I mean. We map the wild by its animals: snakes, gators, hogs, spiders. We rarely think of plants as predators, but by any honest measure, this quiet green thing on the riverbank outkills most of the animals we're taught to fear. And it's spreading along the exact corridors we love most: the water's edge, the shade, the cool green banks where we take our families to get away from everything. The most dangerous plant on the continent doesn't hide in some remote swamp you'd never set foot in. It grows where you go to relax. That's the unsettling part. I keep coming back to how ordinary it looks. If it were huge or spined or bright red, we'd give it a wide berth on pure instinct. Instead, it's modest, lacy, almost delicate. It looks like the kind of roadside wildflower you'd let a child pick. And that gap between how it looks and what it does is the whole danger. Let me separate fact from my own read one more time clearly. Verified, water hemlock is the most violently toxic plant in North America. It grows across much of Texas near water. A small bite of root can kill an adult. There is no antidote, and it peaks in toxicity in spring. All documented, all real, none of it opinion. My rad, flagged plainly as opinion, is about the future. As water patterns keep shifting, I believe we'll see this plant turn up on more banks that used to feel safe, and more people meeting it without knowing what it is. I can't prove a coming surge, but the ingredients for one are sitting right there in the ground. And that's the shift I want you to carry out of this. The wild isn't static. Water moves. Plants follow water. The map of what's dangerous and where quietly redraws itself year after year, while we assume our familiar spots stay exactly the same. The creek you fished for 20 years is under no obligation to stay the same. None of this means stay indoors. Texas rivers are beautiful and worth every single visit. It just means go with your eyes open. Understand that not every threat has teeth. Some of them flower. Some of them sway gently in the current while you cast your line, completely indifferent to the fact that one bite could end you. Teach your kids the one unbreakable rule. We don't eat anything wild unless a grown-up who really knows says it's safe. Teach it early and teach it often. It's a boring rule right up until the one day it isn't. And on that day, it's the only thing standing between a normal afternoon and a real tragedy. Watch your dog. Watch your livestock. Learn what those lacy white flower clusters look like near your local water, so you at least pause before you or your animals get close. You don't have to become a botanist. You just have to trade blind trust for a little healthy suspicion every time you're at the water's edge. Because here's the truth under all of it. For all our maps and warning signs and safety rails, the wild still holds things we don't fully see. Sometimes, The deadliest thing in the whole landscape isn't the one with fangs or claws, it's the one standing perfectly still, flowering in the sun, patiently waiting for a single mistake. Water hemlock has been that thing in North America longer than any of us have been alive. The most violently toxic plant on the continent. No cure, hiding in plain sight is something almost edible. And now, quietly, following the water into places more and more of us are starting to go. That combination is what makes it worth fearing. So the next time you're on a Texas riverbank and you see a spray of small white flowers leaning out over the water, catching the light, take a good long look. Admire it if you want, but don't touch it, don't taste it, don't let the dog chew it, and absolutely never, under any circumstances, put it in your mouth. That's the story of the quiet killer on the Texas riverbank. Not a monster, not an invader from somewhere else. A native plant, patient, beautiful, and utterly lethal, spreading along the water while most people have no idea it's even there. Now you know. And knowing, honestly, is the only real protection there is. I want to hear from you now. What grows near the water where you live that people give a wide berth to and won't quite explain why? What have you seen out on your local creeks, rivers, or marshes that you couldn't fully explain? Drop it in the comments. I read them, and some of these stories are how I find the next one. If this changed the way you look at a riverbank, share it with someone who fishes, hikes, forages, or just lets the dog run near the water. It's a 30-second warning that could genuinely matter one day. And to me, that's worth more than any view count this video will ever get. Pass it on, because the wild is still writing new chapters. Water is still moving. Plants are still following it into new ground year after year, and the line between a safe afternoon and a dangerous one is thinner and a whole lot quieter than most of us ever realize. So stay sharp out there. Pay attention to the bank. Learn the plants near your water. Respect the ones you can't identify. And remember the single rule that outranks all the others. When in doubt, don't touch and never taste. That one sentence has saved more lives than every antidote ever invented, which for this particular plant is exactly none. 0. That's what you're working with. Thanks for staying with me all the way through. If you want more stories about the hidden dangers quietly reshaping the American wild, you already know what to do. Keep your eyes open, keep your kids close to shore, and keep questioning what's really growing out there by the water. Until next time, watch the water.